coming in, I'm sure. So we want to go ahead and get started and try our best to stay close to the time and honor your time. Thank you for coming out to the North 24th Street Facade Improvement Program meeting. I just want to say it's a new day. We think it's a new day. I'm saying it's a new day, and we're happy to be here and be able to talk about this program. Just a couple of quick housekeeping notes and administrative information. Housekeeping, first of all, thank you, Habitat for Humanity, for hosting us this evening. They have provided water over here, so there's water. It's ice cold. I've already had some. It's very good. And then if you have to use the restroom, if you go out this door, there are restrooms, two restrooms, one to the left and right. As soon as you hit that door, look to the left and right on the opposite side of the wall in the hallway. So just wanted to take care of that. But as far as administrative notes for tonight, this meeting is being recorded. So let me get a little closer to the mic to make sure that my voice is captured. Apologize. So Grant Daly in the back is our city planner. He's helping us with this recording tonight and has helped us throughout this entire process. There is a sheet that is available at the welcome table. I think I've captured all of you to have you sign in and fill out a name tag. Wanted you to know, as the screen says, follow-up information will be sent to the people on that list. So as you sign in, we'll make sure that any follow-up information will get to you. The application, presentation, recording, and other materials will be posted to the planning department's website following the meeting tonight. A page has been created specifically for the North 24th Street Facade Improvement Program, and this is the website address. Under number 4, follow-up information can also be requested from Alyssa Silachek, who is to my left, and you'll be hearing from her momentarily. And this is her email address. So just so you have that information now. And so now let me just make some brief introductions, and I want to start by recognizing one of our elected officials who is in the audience, Councilmember Juanita Johnson. Would you like to come up and give any words of encouragement of some sort?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would just like to say thank you guys for coming. I'm really confident about this program. This is something that has been encouraged and promoted on several of the neighborhood development plans back in 1990. For example, Long School Development Plan had a plan that included facade improvement along these here corridors. OIC also had a development plan for facade improvement along these corridors. And so I would like to say that this is something that this neighborhood, this area, this community has wanted for a very long time, and now we're seeing it come to life. I would encourage everyone that has this opportunity to have their building enhanced to take advantage of this opportunity, to use it so that we as a community can become back vital and stimulate the economic value that we know that this community richly deserves. Thank you again for coming. Thank you for listening, and please promote this package to other individuals in your space about this wonderful program. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the agenda. I will go right to introductions now of some of the staff, or all of the staff that's here tonight from the planning department. So starting with myself, I am Bridget Hadley, Economic Development Manager in the Planning Department. Had the privilege of working with some of the Planning Department members who are in a different section, and that doesn't happen often. I was really glad that happened. So it was a true team effort to put this program together. So this is a brand new program, and we're happy to offer it to you. Ed Dantzler, when I ask Yes, can you just raise your hand so everybody will know? Ed Dantzler's the construction manager. He's right in the back. Lewis Wright, you raise your hand, project manager. Some of you may know him, may not, may be working with him. Who knows? Shelley McCafferty. She is the historic preservation planner. She's also an architect by trade. So she's going to be helping us out with this program. Joyce Stevens, she's standing at the door helping us to get people signed in. She's a city planner, has been working with the Housing and Community Development Program for a while. Grant Daly, outreach planner, as I said, he's on our camera. And I'm sorry, I need to get closer to this mic. And then Sharon Smith, if she would raise her, she's the city planner. She is the newest person. She just joined us this week. So don't bombard her too much, if you would. But we're glad to have her help us with this program. And then Alyssa Silicek, she is the community development manager. And some of you, if you're contractors, may have worked with her. She has been working with the Section 3 program and contractors for a while. So I am actually going to turn it over to her. Whoops, I hit the wrong button. I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa, and she's going to take us further into this meeting and talk about the overview of the program. Thank you, Alyssa.
Good evening, everyone. Like Bridget said, I'm Alyssa Solacek. I'm the Community Development Manager for the city. I'm going to just kind of highlight some aspects of this program, which we're very excited to introduce to you this evening and to have available in this community. The overall purpose of the North 24th Street Commercial Facade Improvement Program is to support the revitalization of the business community along North 24th Street through the investment in the physical appearance of the buildings by reducing blight, addressing non-conforming design standards, and improving public safety through lighting and improved sightlines as well. And then the program priorities and the funding itself, I'll highlight that real briefly as well. So there are three main program priorities that we've developed. We're looking at occupancy, so supporting projects with buildings that have active tenants and businesses, so they're not vacant. Looking at the overall impact, supporting projects that contribute greatly toward enhancing the visual appearance of the North 24th Street commercial corridor, and then historical significance. So looking at the preservation of historically significant properties along this corridor as well. So the funding for this program is financed by the Community Development Block Grant Program, and we have roughly $400,000 available for facade improvements through this program. And the funding for the program came from the sale of another building along the corridor. And so with the sale of that building, the CDBG investment is now going to be reinvested to the buildings along this corridor as well. So that's just kind of a brief overview of where the money came from and kind of why we're reinvesting it here in this community as well. So the funding that will go to each project then, it comes in the form of a deferred payment loan, and the total rehabilitation cost is not anticipated to exceed $19,999, about $20,000 roughly. And just to kind of give you an overview of what a deferred payment loan is, essentially what we would do with this is you have this funding, a lien would be placed on the property for a 5-year term, and then this loan is forgiven over that 5-year term. So each month of that that loan is in existence, it slowly depreciates over time at no interest. So if perhaps if you own a building, it has this kind of funding attached to it, and you were to sell the building, then the CDBG program would be reimbursed based on kind of where you are within that loan period. So that's just something to keep in mind as well, that it functions essentially kind of like a forgivable grant, but it is a loan with some conditions attached to it. And then applicant eligibility, we have a map that's available right here. I've got a map kind of on the next 2 slides. Also kind of on the table, we've got a copy of the map, and it's included in the program guidelines as well. So if you need a copy of it, we have plenty available this evening as well. So one of the stipulations for the program is that the building must be located along North 24th Street between Cumming and Ames. So we've highlighted on the map the area in red are the properties that essentially are eligible to receive this funding, and the yellow or gold is the BID's boundaries. The applicant must be an owner of the building. Business tenants are eligible to apply, but you need the signature approval of the owner, since essentially they will be the ones that will be signing any contracts and having the lien placed upon their property and having the deferred payment loan. The applicant or building owner can't be employed by the city of Omaha or in a position to kind of influence the funding source. So it can't be an elected official or somebody who is on the selection committee. The building itself must have a ground floor commercial space open to the public, so it must have a commercial purpose. It cannot have been deteriorated beyond economic repair, which will be kind of determined by our city construction specialist. It cannot be slated for demolition or have an active rec permit attached to it. And the property itself can't require kind of an engineering assessment or have any major structural or integrity related issues attached to it. Unfortunately, with the CDBG program, when there are structural issues, it's very challenging for us to be able to use the funding to then kind of improve that building. So other kind of criteria along with the eligibility requirements, mortgages and any kind of payment kind of must be current. So the owner cannot have federal or state tax liens applied to the property either. Apartment and rental properties and buildings that have a primary purpose as a place of worship are also ineligible for funding. Commercial buildings that house establishments that are related to gambling, gun stores, adult bookstores, etc., are not eligible for the program. And the owner shall procure and maintain fire and extended coverage insurance during the loan term, and that coverage should essentially kind of cover the city investment into that property. And if there were to be, say, an insurance claim at some point, that would kind of be applied toward the rehabilitation cost as well. Rehabilitation costs should be at least $1,000, and there should be no litter, debris, kind of active code enforcement issues attached to the property. So now I'm going to hand this over to Shelley McCafferty for a few slides to talk about the kind of improvements that could be made on these properties and to give some kind of design related examples of what this program might effectively look like. Just push down to switch there.
Okay, go down. Okay. See if I'm smart enough to figure out this technology. Okay. Yeah, I'm Shelley McCafferty. I'll be working with this program and with you as applicants, with the construction specialist, on issues related to architecture and design. Of course, we would absolutely love to fulfill all your dreams for your building and your facade and make it just what you want, but we are limited. This is a CDBG program, a government program. And the two things that we really need to keep in mind as we think about what we want to do with your facade is, one, we have a maximum expenditure for each facade of, can be no greater than $20,000, actually less than $20,000. And we also have a really limited time frame in which to accomplish this. We need to be done with these projects October 1st. So we need to be realistic about what we can do with that, and I'll have some examples for you. But first, let's just talk a little bit about what some of those qualified expenditures will be. First of all, we got window and door repair and or replacement. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. If you've got second floor windows, for instance, we could replace those. New front door. All of these need to be on the front of the property. The intent of this is to enhance the appearance of your property and hopefully get more people, more business coming in, attracted to your business and attracted to North 24th Street and the corridor. We can repair or replace facade doors, bulkheads, transoms, similar storefront related features. Now, typically what we would want on a storefront would be, the big storefront windows. You usually have the recessed entrance. You had the transoms up above. and then it's like what we call a bulkhead or kick plate at the bottom. That's the ideal. With less than $20,000, we probably will only be able to do repairs. We may be able to replace components of your storefront and maybe do some other cleanup and some other things to make it look more attractive. We'd love to be able to say that we can replace the whole thing, but that's probably not going to be realistic with our time frame and with our budget. The restoration of window openings that have been covered or filled. Again, ideally, to attract people into your business, we want those big storefront windows. We want people to feel welcome. We want them to be able to see what's inside, see that it's a good environment, that you've got goods to sell or business. When we have those windows closed up, it tends to be less attractive to bringing people into your business. So if we can possibly open any of those up, that would be one of the goals that we would have, and also an ineligible expense. We can also certainly do painting, surface preparation and painting of the exterior of the building. If you've got a nice older building that we want to preserve, in which the masonry is unpainted, we would want to leave that unpainted. If your building's already been painted, then we can paint the masonry. We would just want to make sure that the masonry is in good condition, you've got a good substrate, and that any of the tuck pointing and so forth has been completed with that. And along those lines, we have masonry cleaning, repair, and tuck pointing. Those would qualify. Signage, I think that's something that is definitely an expense, and we could do pretty much on any building, regardless of the state of your storefront. And then exterior lighting. We want to do exterior lighting both to improve security, but also to have a more welcoming, friendly environment. We can do awnings, and my preference, I think our preference, is to do a more of a durable metal awning. A lot of facade improvement programs do fabric awnings, and those have issues in a fairly short life. And I just want to emphasize, here again, that all the improvements must be visible from the 24th Street, from the right-of-way. We aren't doing anything to the back of the building or really to the sides of the building where they can't be seen. Okay, let's look at a few examples. Okay. So this, I think, is sort of a kind of a typical example. I pulled a lot of things off the internet, looking at other facade improvement programs, trying to find things that would be realistic. In this case, the before, we had some missing windows, we had some masonry issues, and probably within our $20,000 budget, we could replace the upper story windows like they did here. We could clean the masonry. It looks like they removed some paint, some glue, that kind of thing, and just did a really, clean it up, new awning, paint, masonry, and that type of work. This is another example where we've got on your facade, if you've got vinyl or a covering of some sort that's lost its attractiveness over the years, we could peel that back. We could replace that with something that's going to be paintable, more durable, probably using like a fiber cement product. Again, awning, we could paint the front door, replace the front door. If we've got repairs to the storefront, we could do that. This is an example where, it's not really the style of architecture we have, but what they've done here is repaired the stucco, and the paint made a huge difference. Painting a building, doing repairs to the surface, to the masonry, the substrate can make a big difference. This is another example. To do exactly what they did here, we probably wouldn't quite be able to do it in 20,000, but repairing the masonry, painting the masonry, either restoring, rehabilitating windows, new doors, new windows on the first floor as well. A lot of the storefronts that we have here no longer have the original storefront components. The portions of that storefront have been filled in, the transom, some of the storefront windows, and you have kind of a mishmash of materials. These are a couple examples where we didn't replace the storefront, but we did go in, peel back some of those materials, replace them with something that's consistent. We repainted them, we did signage. and just some other things to dress up that storefront and make it look cleaner and more attractive. Talking about awnings, the issue again with fabric awnings is once they get damaged, they are prone to tearing in the wind. They're also prone in this climate to having algae and other biological growth on them. And it doesn't take too long for them to start to look pretty awful. So if we want to do awnings, my recommendation is that we do a metal awning. Both there on the left and the lower right hand corner, those are both metal awnings. The green one was really designed to look like a fabric awning, but that's metal, and then it was powder coated. And so I think there's a lot we can do creatively to do really attractive awnings and signage and paint and clean up some of the materials that you have on your facade. Signage, this is where we can really get creative and do some interesting things and look at your graphics and have some fun with signage. We are less limited by the preservation of the facade, but this is where we can get creative. And a good sign can make a really big difference in terms of how appealing your building is. I know when we drove up down the corridor, there were businesses in some of these buildings that I couldn't tell if there was a business there or not. But fortunately, we had people that know your community, and because there wasn't a good signage that was really inviting for people to come into the building. And then, of course, lighting. I mean, these are just some examples. I know some of you do have lighting on your building. Some of it's kind of industrial. Maybe you want to do something a little more decorative, a little more appealing. We can incorporate lighting with the signage, so we do illuminated signs. So again, this is the part that you can really be creative and have some flexibility with. So the lighting, the signage, and the awnings are things that we can let our imaginations go a little bit and have some fun and do some good, interesting colors, that type of thing. Let's see. So I think we'll probably leave questions till the end, and I guess let's do a process. But I'll be happy to answer any questions about the eligible expenses when we're done.
Okay, so what does this process look like? Kind of walk you through those steps here. So applications are due to Bridget Hadley by April 28th. The selection committee will develop a selection committee which will then review and prioritize the applications. And once those projects have been identified, each applicant will be notified of where they kind of fall on that priority list. And then once they're notified of that, they'll start working with Joyce on the kind of verifying property ownership and doing some of the applicant intake related work to kind of get you prepared to start developing the scope and then getting your project available to bid. So once you've kind of verified your ownership, then you'll work with a construction specialist, so Lewis and Sharon, to kind of evaluate your property, develop a work write-up, and then develop a budget. And then the applicant or the owner of the building then has the opportunity to kind of sign off on that kind of proposed scope of work and the budget that we're looking at. And then the construction specialist prepares that project to bid. And then the contract is awarded to the lowest and best bidder. And we'll talk a little bit more about the contractor piece kind of later in the presentation as well. Once the contractor has been identified, then the loan agreement is signed by the property owner and the city. The rehabilitation contract is then signed by the property owner and the contractor. And a pre-construction conference will be held with the construction specialist and the contractor as well. And these projects are subject or likely to be subject to Davis-Bacon labor requirements. And so part of the pre-construction conference will include kind of a training, a review of what Davis-Bacon construction compliance looks like. And then after that, construction will occur. It'll be managed again by a construction specialist. So if you're an owner of a building who's receiving this funding, you will work very closely with our construction specialist team. They'll kind of be there with you through most of this process. And Once construction concludes, the owner then has the opportunity to kind of sign off on the project and sign off on the disposition of funds. So I want to also kind of talk more about project selection and kind of the program completion process, because it's a very quick process. So once we've got our slate of applicants after April 28th, selection committee will meet, and that committee will be comprised of planning department staff and also neighborhood representation. Then that group will look at each application and consider, where that application falls based on the occupancy priority, the impact to the neighborhood, and the historical significance of the property. So there'll be scores kind of generated for each application based on those 3 items. Then the selection committee will prepare the list of applications and we'll kind of have a rank order as to where each application falls on the priority scale. And the city will also then notify those property owners about where they fall in the ranking and what the next steps are. So it's just some highlights there. And then once the projects, once they start going, or the first projects that we'll go with will be based on their priority order. So if you get a notice saying that you were priority number 1, you'll be the first one kind of funneled through the kind of process. You'll start working with choice, you'll start working on the scope of work, go through that process initially. And then just to kind of talk about the program itself, right now this is, we have this $400,000 in CDBG funding roughly to contribute to this project. It's the only funding round that we're aware of at this time. Some of that is because with the nature of the CDBG program, we have an annual allocation from HUD generally. So every year we're kind of evaluating what projects are funded for the year and what the priorities are for that given year. So that's kind of where the 1-year time frame comes from also. And also due to CDBG, so with the CDBG program, we have a very short period in which we're expected to expend the funds that we have either received from other projects or that we've been allocated directly from HUD for the year. And so in order for this program and our projects to meet that timeliness requirement, we anticipate that the majority of project funds need to be expended by October 1st, which we recognize is a very short time frame. But again, October 1st is the deadline for the majority of funding. So applications, talked about it a little bit, they're due April 28th to Bridget Hadley. You can either mail them to Bridget, drop them off at our office. You can email them to Bridget as well. I think we've got at least one that has already done so. So it's been very encouraging. Contractor eligibility. So this project, in order to be eligible to bid on the North 24th Street projects, contractors need to be included on our approved contractor list, which is a similar list that we use for some of our other city managed CDBG programs as well. So applications for this list are available through our department. We also have applications here tonight. Lewis Wright is the contact for that. And so if you have questions for him, if there are any contractors that are here tonight, please feel free to ask us more questions about that process. We're encouraging all contractors to submit an application to be on the approved contractor list. Since these are more commercial projects in nature, we're anticipating that we'll need Class A and Class B contractors for this particular project. But there may be some other projects that only require a Class E or a different type of classification. So again, we're encouraging all contractors to kind of sign up and be on that list, or to go through the application process. And then once you're on the approved contractor list, you're also eligible for other programs as well, like our CDBG's exterior repair programs and the barrier removal program. You're eligible to be a contractor to bid on those projects as well. And to kind of help further encourage more participation and make sure more folks are aware about what the contractor application process looks like, we are planning to have a pre-recorded webinar available by the end of next week that kind of highlights what the application is like as well. So with that, that is the end of our presentation. We do have time for questions, so please feel free to ask. We have, like I said, we have several members of the planning department that are here this evening, and so we'd be happy to discuss this project further with you. Are there any questions? Yes, yes.
You saying it's the front of the building only?
Yep.
And then using pre-approved or contractors who have already been on the list. And I see, does it include like in front of where our store is, a fence to, like kind of like a fence there to close off the driveway from the street? Is that possible? Is that part of it? Like a gate, not a fence, it's a gate. Well, you might want to get closer to the mic so that we can make sure the response is recorded.
Sure. No, sorry, I'm wandering away from my station. Forgive me. No, fencing I don't believe is kind of on our slate of projects, but it's a gate. Yeah, a gate isn't currently. I don't know, Shelley, if you want to kind of highlight the presence of gates or those kind of similar features on these buildings.
Other questions? We had discussed doing nice fences and gates at one time, and I don't honestly remember exactly. I think we decided not to do those, but we're certainly willing to look at things on a case by case basis. And as we look at our priorities and our selections, if we've got money left over, a gate may be a low priority, but it may be something that we have money to spend on. So, I would say apply for whatever you're dreaming about, and then we will help work through it. Lewis and I, maybe Ed, to kind of make sure we get it down to that 20,000. We can work with you and kind of figure out what's eligible and what we can pay for and what's likely to be realistic.
I think one of the most important things is like on the application itself, make sure that, obviously we give what are eligible enhancements, but describe what you're looking to do. And that gives us a better way to evaluate, what adds to the curb appeal of your property.
Yeah.
I have two questions. If I get a sign, and say the sign is 30,000, will you provide up to 20,000 in funding for that sign, and I'm responsible for 10, or I only get a sign that's 20 or 1990?
Well, if it can be done, I think within our time frame, then if you want to supplement that, then I think that would be acceptable. We are hesitant to say, supplement it by 30,000, 40,000, whatever, because that's going to be a much bigger project, and the potential of finishing that by October 1st is less likely.
So the project itself has to be done by the first?
Most of all this money has to be spent, or whatever the right technical term is, by October 31st. So, yeah. First, excuse me, October 1st. Sorry, 1st. Keep on thinking end of October. Yes.
So the second question is the type of sign doesn't matter. It's just as long as that the project is within the 20 and it falls into those categories.
Yeah, well, we are going to be concerned about the quality of the sign and the design of the sign. And so I don't want to say anything goes, but yeah, we still have to comply with building code, and it depends a little on your building too. If you've got an older building, we want to probably do something smaller but really high quality and interesting. If you've got a building that's, say, a concrete block building, then I think we've got a lot more flexibility to do something really big and funky and interesting with it. Okay, so we will be looking at design, but we also really want to look at fulfilling, the needs you have for your business as well.
So, I can walk through the timeline, how this would transpire. So, you take the application, what you do is be selected, and then they will meet with a planner or somebody from the department, the owner, to determine what their wish list is. And they determine they want the sign, they determine they want some lighting, they pick the color of the building.
Go to the mic so I get recorded. So you have questions.
So I'm trying to say, like in the contractor piece, they got with you, they got their wish list, they want this sign, they want these 3 lights, they want this window.
Mhm.
Do y'all order those components, or does the contractor finally get this wish list and have to try to make that happen? Because sometimes window orders could be 4 to 6 weeks, depending on
Sure.
the item.
Sure.
Or that's something that you already come with the owner, and y'all put it on order, or how does that work?
Do you want to talk about that,
Yeah,
Lewis?
that's what I was gonna mention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna mention. It kind of goes to your question. Is similar to like with our other rehabilitation programs. Similar to our other rehabilitation programs. And Joyce, you can check me on this. Is we have budgetary limitations, but after you have fulfilled what the contractor has bidded on, you can actually enter into an agreement with that contractor that is above and beyond what we are able to pay for within the time frame as well. But I mean, but you have to think about once our funds are expended, we have participants in our other programs that have worked out arrangements that the contractor can come back and finish up any additional work that you desire to have done. And then to your question, sir, you wanted to know the
It'd be like the signing piece, so like the owner and the planner is gonna determine what they're getting for the amount of money, right?
Mhm.
They want some signs, some lights, and they got qualified for a window. Does the contractor get to order the window, or you gonna say what window you want, or who wants it?
Well, this is actually really a new program for us to be in, delving into the commercial aspect. Generally, everything we've done up to now has really been residential. Even when we've done commercial projects, we put it out to bid and we know what our budgetary limitations are, and they have to be within that. But using the analogy that you're addressing is that
They're like the contractor, like, hey, I got all this stuff, I want this. I'm like, okay.
well, and that's kind of why we are starting this out with working with the contractors that are on our approved list. And then there's ways that we can work with our contractors to make sure that if it's windows, if it's, lighting, signage, particularly within our budgetary limitations, that we can actually help them be able to make sure that they get it ordered, invoiced. We can be able to pay for those type of things because we know that there are longer lead times. And then that gives that contractor an opportunity to be performing all the other work that is, necessary for the enhancements to be complete.
So if it's a window, like a aluminum clad window they wanted, double pane, and that's 8 week out, we come to you and say, hey, we only got 2 months left. If there's a possibility they say, yeah, I'll go with this window, that all kind of as we proceed, those things get worked out.
Yes. And our contractors will be the first, since they're the ones that's going to be retained, working in representation of us and for the owners, to make sure when they responded to the bid, based on our work write-up, they know with that supplier that there's going to be a longer lead time.
And I would also just say that, we don't have time to hire an architect and to spec all this stuff. But what'll probably happen is you describe the best you can what you want to do with your building. And then Lewis and I will, or Ed and I, or all 3 of us will go out and we'll look at your building. And then I can, take some photos, we can do some sketches, we can look at picking some products and kind of,
And that with the owner, right, before a contractor,
yes, with the owner. And so then when it comes to you,
you have a write-up of the projection. So
yes.
we bid what the scope is and the window dimensions or whatever, type of window, and we'll kind of give you our bid, and we'll select it. That's when the window, whatever, get ordered, I guess.
Yes. Yes.
You mentioned something about after 5 years it disappeared, there's no interest. What is the payment on that?
There is none. As long as you continue, as long as you continue to own the building for 5 years, then the loan itself just depreciates. You don't have to make monthly payments. It just depreciates kind of over time. The investment does. The only situation that I could see where somebody would have to maybe make a payment is if they're selling the building before before they've met that 5-year time frame. Yes.
Back to the signage. And so from what I'm hearing, we work with you and you have the contractors we are that we can do the work with. So if I have a sign, do you have the designers also with as part of this contract?
A sign designer.
Do
A
I go get my own design, then bring it to you? Supposing I've been approved, am I going to get all this outside and then coming to you with it, or are you working with me from the beginning to the end of this project to say this is allowable, this is not allowable?
Sure. So yeah, we would work with you kind of from the beginning to the end of the project. And we have folks here like Shelly who can provide maybe some guidance about some design requirements as well, just to make sure it kind of fits in with the nature of the area, meets the historical significance requirements. So yeah, we would kind of be on hand to work with you kind of throughout that process. The signage is also kind of one of those newer projects for us because we do so many residential projects. But yeah, yes.
My question too is, you're saying it's the front of the building. What about sidewalk? Not so much the sidewalk, but there's a space in front of our building that they didn't do anything to.
Mhm.
And when I say they, I mean the city. And so I'd like it to make it more even, because right now it can be a hazard because it's kind of not even.
Mhm.
As far as smoothness of the ceiling, can that be, since it is in front of the shop, is that possible that that could be included in on this as well?
So right now, kind of like I think you're talking about more of like a walkway, entryway type.
It's right in front of the door.
Mhm.
For some reason, they didn't go up to the door. They stopped maybe about 3 feet before the door. So, and because it's not new, and the sidewalk away from there is new, but right up against the door, say about, like I said, 3 feet away from the door, it's not.
Mhm.
I see that as a hazard for
Sure.
people who you can trip over.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's a good question. That probably falls in more of the when Shelley mentioned the case by case basis that we would evaluate that. Right now, we're not, we don't. We're a sidewalk improvement itself isn't eligible, but maybe a situation like yours is something that we could look at. I'd include it in your application for us to kind of consider and talk through with the selection committee as well. It's a good suggestion. Yes. Correct. It's not eligible. Yep. Yes. Oh, who was first?
You said this twice, but sometimes I gotta hear it 3 times before I believe it. This is strictly down 24th Street, that is the key activity.
Right. It's front storefronts along 24th Street. Yep. From Ames to Cumming. Yep.
Second question is, priority is occupied building.
Hmm.
Does that exclude vacant buildings that you're trying to get occupied, or is it not priority?
Sure. So occupancy is the top priority is what I would say. If you have a situation where your building is vacant right now, but you're looking to identify a tenant, you have kind of a preliminary tenant, that's good to include in your application as well and to be communicating that to the selection committee. Any other? Oh, yes.
When it comes to the contractors winning a bid on the project, is that just like general contractor, or is that general contractor hired a subcontractor?
I think it probably, and Lewis can step in if I misspeak, but it's going to probably function more like a general contractor who might have subcontractors, even though some of this work might be kind of smaller projects technically. But I'll let Lewis talk about this. So the question is if the work itself falls more in like a general contractor scenario or more of a subcontractor opportunity. I think you're asking about subcontract opportunities. Yep.
And that's part of the reason that we had referenced like our approved contractor list, because they actually are general contractors. The general contractor has the ability to sub out work. And just like with specialty windows. They can be able to, get those windows installed by a, subprime.
I think there was a question. Did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, you said it would go by priority.
Mm-hmm.
What makes a business survive? Is it the revenue that the city is getting from it? Is it how long the business has been there? Is it the amount the business or the building is worth? What makes it a priority?
So it's if it's occupied or not is one of the priorities. Kind of there's a scale. They'll have a selection committee. Will have a kind of scale as to the impact. If it's if they think the project or the proposed improvements have a big impact in the neighborhood, they'll get a higher score. They think it has maybe a more moderate impact, maybe a middle of the road score. And if they don't think it's going to have much impact, it might not have a very high score. So that's occupancy and impact, and then the third way then is the historical significance. So if it's a property that, Shelley is probably more adept in speaking on the historical significance of these properties, but if it's a project that's presumed to be historically or culturally significant, likely to score higher as well. So it's a scoring based on these three priorities that we've identified. Not looking at revenue or situations like that. It's strictly those three priorities. There more questions?
So if you have a business that doesn't generate revenue, but you want to beautify it as opposed to a business that is generating revenue, but it's not.
It's hard to say because we'll look at the impact of the building. So if it's a building, for example, that is highly trafficked, it has a lot of people that come through, might be a higher priority because it might have higher impact. It's difficult for me to say without actually looking at the application and talking it through with the selection committee, but that's kind of how I perceive it. The impact is, is this, say, a well-visited business? Has it been here for a long time? Are the improvements really going to kind of enhance the neighborhood? I think those are the kind of questions and aspects that the selection committee will look at as they review these applications. Right. I would think so. I'll defer to our historical expert, Shelley, but yeah, Shelley, do you want to speak on the historical piece a little more?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, certainly. I mean, if you've got one of these older brick buildings, they are going to be a higher priority. Some of them do have structural issues, though, so that's could eliminate them as being eligible if there's going to be a lot of engineering and structural things that we cannot pay for with this grant. We do have, I think, at least one building, it's called the Tip Top Taylor building, which is a local landmark. So that would be probably a high priority project, one that we really want to see something done with. You may do some in terms of impact of the design. With an older building, just cleaning the masonry and the tuck pointing and ensuring that it has some longevity, that could score fairly high, even though maybe you're just doing a sign on it. Other buildings where it just isn't a very interesting building or a culturally significant building, but you want to do a lot with it, and so it's going to have a big impact. That might score the same. We're trying to balance out our priorities. Yeah, does that answer your question? I guess. And we do have survey information on most of these buildings, so we'll be looking at that to determine what its significance is, if that's available. Okay. Yes, I mean, and certainly when we would do our specifications, one of the concerns with historic building, if you're doing tuck pointing or cleaning, is what that process is. You want to use the right mortar, you want to clean it using appropriate methods. So those would be specified when it goes out to bid. Well, our priority are buildings that face onto 24th Street. It's going to depend a little bit on how competitive this process is, how many people we have interested. If we find that, we're only spending, a third or a fourth of it on 24th Street, then we may go to that next around the corner. So it would be a lower priority. But I would say go ahead and fill out an application. But our first priority is on the 24th Street corridor that's visible from that street.
I have a question on my particular building. It has 3 bays.
Okay.
Do we put an application for all 3 bays, or we just put only 3 one?
Well, we had this discussion, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Bridget, our conclusion was that one property, regardless of the size of it, would be a maximum expenditure of $20,000 or less than $20,000 for one application per property. But yeah, we did have this discussion, and we're just limited with the CBDG. Yeah, I was an advocate for 20,000 per bay, but I lost.
These questions are for you. You guys mentioned that this is your first time doing this project, or doing something like this in which you are offering the community to do facade using CDBG funds, correct?
I didn't speak to the correct extent. As a new program that we're offering it to the general public or the business owners, we've done some other commercial projects that did facade improvements on 24th Street.
So, can you explain to this group, because we're going to be the individuals that will be advertising this product to other people in this community, how you went about deciding the guidelines and all of that? How did that come about in terms of the ranking order, in terms of the whole gamut that you just stated in your slide? How was that how did you come to that decision? I think I'm the wrong person.
Do you, probably you and I can both
I
start.
can speak only to the construction side of it and done.
And here's why I'm asking as the city council representative for this area. I see some concern here, and that is here's some opportunities for CDBG funds or community development block grants or opportunities for this area to have a leg up, have an opportunity to perhaps be a part of the process of being the contractor. And so, and then when we see the listing here of a bidding process of who's the lowest bidder, that may mean that someone that's living or has a business in Elkhorn may be the lowest bidder, and they would, I'm just asking, they would then in turn be successful. So I guess I need more clarification. When we're talking about the bidding process, and again, we're going back to the contractors that are on our approved list. We have them from a range from A to E. I want to say a number of maybe 20 in the 20s of as far as the number of contractors. When you make the reference of lowest bid, the process that when we do the work write-up, the estimate, the contractors on our approved list, when they're bidding on this, they have to be within 10% of our estimate, plus or minus. So we do put a cost figure and a cost estimate to it. So when it goes out to bid and when it's awarded to the successful bidder that is within that range,
We don't just guess at it. We actually have a formal process of the work write-up and the cost estimate. So when the bids are received, we know it's within that spectrum.
Okay, so I'm asking who determined what conversation took place to arrive at all of the criteria that are listed here in this slide.
So we, the kind of planning department staff, decided the guidelines. Our
Based on what knowledge, based on what reason?
Sure. So we looked at we looked at other programs that are similar that have used CDBG dollars. I've worked on, I think, 3 or 4 other CDBG funded facade improvement programs in other communities. And so I kind of brought that knowledge here. Shelley has done a lot of work with historic properties and historic preservation, particularly in kind of commercial downtown spaces as well. And she can speak to that. And so we also had to kind of tie in some of the CDBG program requirements and kind of based our guidelines based on some of our other programs as well to kind of tie into kind of the process that we've found to be successful as well. So that's where kind of the idea for the guidelines has come in. It's been kind of a group discussion and a lot, we talked a lot about how much to award to each property. We kind of fell on that price in hopes that we could distribute more funds to more properties as well. Um, you know, there are, with the CDBG program itself, kind of we're about to open a new cycle of funding. So if there are properties that maybe require more work or maybe aren't the best fit for this particular program, maybe an RFP process through the CDBG kind of 24 application cycle is a good fit. So that's an opportunity as well. But the guidelines themselves, we developed them kind of based on our experience, our knowledge, and some of our other programs as well.
So is there some wiggle room to change those out?
I mean, there may be some aspects that we can adjust kind of as we get applications and think through that process, but right now those are kind of the stipulations or the requirements for this program. There's some things that we're kind of bound by just because of the nature of CDBG, that there's some things that, especially with the facade, that CDBG will or won't kind of cover. So that was a big determining factor as well.
Okay, but just
One more question.
you mentioned $400,000.
Mm-hmm.
If for some reason you do not receive enough applications to spend $400,000,
So then, we'd probably talk about a few different options, maybe opening up a second cycle of funding, maybe reevaluating dollar amounts or some other requirements. I think we'd take probably this first round and kind of discuss kind of areas to improve, other areas that we maybe should change. With this, being our first kind of facade improvement program, I think we're hoping to take these guidelines and kind of evaluate how it works, essentially kind of do an evaluation of the success of the program and the applicability of the guidelines. Well, it's the first facade improvement program that I'm aware of. Maybe we've done some previously, but it's not the first facade project that we've done. We've done other facade projects through the CDBG program in this area. But
the project aspect, meaning setting up the criteria, doing all of that, this is the first program.
yes.
This is a whole new program.
Yep. It's new, so we're kind of starting from this point and looking to kind of hope that this would be a model for the future. So
I mean, it's a new program, but I think we do have a lot of expertise with CBDG, with facades, with all these different aspects. And I do think, as we had many meetings about this, we had, I don't know how many, but we were meeting about it. I mean, we did have a really robust conversation and looking at the different parameters and how we should do these guidelines. And we landed upon what we did just based upon that maximum, and then as well as the time limit that we have. So I really think, we had extensive conversations and meetings, didn't we? Yeah. So I'm confident we came up with a good a good program for what we're doing right now with this money.
So what I kind of heard, I think, for saying, you don't mind me saying, the contractor. So for example, the selection process, the contractor's on your list, you approve, contractor A is from West wherever, contractor B is locally. Their bid is lower than mine, not than 10%. The contractor got the lowest bid, get it? Or no?
We do not look at
It's just,
geographicness of a person's business.
okay, that's fine.
Because we have contractors that reside right in this district
So it's the
that
lowest
are
bid
on our
contract.
approval list.
So as long as we within 10%.
That's
and
correct.
Most
That's correct.
qualified, lowest best bid.
Lowest and best, there you go.
So it don't have to necessarily be the contractor live here and the one out west. If the one live here a little bit more, you're gonna go with the lowest and best opportunity.
That is correct.
Contractor you approve.
That is
job.
correct.
I knew that would be a question.
I mean, but correct me if I'm wrong from our discussion, but if you have a subcontractor that somebody would like to use, they can go talk to the general contractor and they may get the contract with the general contractor. So certainly encourage your subs to contact the generals that are on our list.
I think what she's saying though, as a minority contractor,
Yeah.
you only $20,000 per unit bids, and like I'm in the process of actually getting back on the list myself.
Mhm.
As like the last 12-month projects, I got a blank slate for the last 12 months. I've been doing other stuff as far as getting construction knowledge, getting degrees, doing energy stuff around the country. So I'm back to square one. So I come in here and I was told this might be a ground floor opportunity to basically cut some teeth. And if my bid don't beat somebody who's probably got a better bid, I gotta go ask him or her for a sub opportunity on a $20 job. I'd probably be better just going doing something else. Yeah. So I think that's what she's saying. So it's not the program for that. I think it's like a other program you got for a small contract that can get involved with what you're saying. This time, not that much.
Floyd, but this also opens up an avenue. I mean, without having discussed, you and I talk. We work, you'll be eligible for the other programs and projects. Right, this is just one of the many. I would, I didn't want to say, I get you.
Yeah.
I hear you. I hear you.
Are there more questions? If not, we'll stick around. We've got our contact information available. If you think of questions after you leave here, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to discuss it.
So thank you for coming, taking the time. It should be available. Your agenda, if you use QR codes and you scan that QR code, it'll take you right to the website. But if you don't, yeah, you contact us, we can direct you to the website, or you can go to the website that was listed. I think it's on the meeting agenda.
Yeah, and if you signed up, we'll send an email after tonight's meeting that has the recording, has a link to the website, and make sure that you get the materials that we've been talking about too.
So make sure you did sign in. That way we'll make sure we get the information to you.
But we don't have to have construction numbers to apply. You just say generally what we want to do.
Right. It's a good question. Yeah, it's come to us with your ideas, and then our construction specialists will work on the scope and the kind of the pricing piece.
I think what I was going to say is, since we are all in the planning department, you can call the planning department main number, and you can just ask for Bridget, Alyssa, Louis, Shelley, and Sharon. And that main number is 402-444-5150. So if all else fails, call the planning department and say, I need to speak with any of us, and they'll get you to us.
Even if you forget our names, just say, I want to talk about the facade improvement program. Probably come to us. And my cards are on the table too. So yeah, if you need contact information, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Look forward to your
Yeah.
application. Good luck.